Yeah. By the way, these analysts, their estimate for Q4 2024 is lower than 1.8. Like this Cantor said all these things, wonderful things about Tesla, and then they go, we think it's going to be 1.78. And another company, another analyst said something similar. The panel here, are you guys expecting us to hit 1.8, more than 1.8 million deliveries for 2024? My sense is that we're seeing China catch up now. Tesla China sales catch up to what it was last year. And it looks like that things are looking very good in the Q3 and Q4. That's going to go up. However, we have been seeing softening, kind of something has happened in Europe for all cars in general. They've removed their incentives. So is the reduction in Europe sales going to be made up by the increase in China sales? In my mind, I think Tesla's going to hit not more, but not significantly more, but will hit over 1.8 because you see Tesla with one incentive after another. So you are just almost like every day there's another incentive that Tesla has thrown out there, and you have to create a whole list of all of them. It's getting confusing. There's so many. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually just speaking to someone the other day. I think heading into Q4 and in Q4, we're going to have an insane amount of incentives. I think the list is going to grow even longer. I think it's possible they could hit 1.8 million. That'd be flat growth year over year. I think Alex Potter is a little bit low. I think Tesla's going to do as much as they can to get as many Model Ys off the lots and out of inventory as possible heading into the end of Q4 as they head into early Q1 with a potential launch of maybe a refresh version. We'll see about that. But we'll see how Cybertruck production continues to evolve. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like 4680s are the issue. They're not the bottleneck, and they have been for so long. It feels like, right, especially with the Model Y 4680 version. But yeah, I think numbers will be flat year over year. Would be my guess.
I think the narrative is going to be even more important than Q4, the kind of the go forward narrative. Because if you look at the last year, we were in a rate hiking regime or rate stabilization regime at kind of peak rates, putting pressure on the auto industry, putting pressure on the consumer, putting pressure on the availability of credit. And now we're on the other side of that. Now you had the first rate cut, and there's expectations of a couple hundred basis points more rate cuts over the next year. So now you're on the other side of that. So if you're Tesla, you could be telling the following story. It's almost the complete opposite of the story they were telling 12 to 18 months ago. So we're going in. Number one, they can say rates are coming down, rates are easing, credit's going to be more available for consumers. It'll allow us to allow us to pull back a little bit on some of these rate spiffs that we're doing that's putting pressure on ASPs, which is going to help gross margins. And by the way, we have these newer, the most affordable vehicles Tesla's ever made are going to start production in the first half of the coming year, which is just months away. So the narrative, I think, going forward, and the fact that they're calling production to be 50% higher than where we're at today. When Tesla puts those plans out and puts the capacity in place, they usually hit it, and they're usually very close. So I think for me, it's going to be a little bit less about Q4. It's going to be a little bit more about the narrative going forward. And just finally, I think they're building these new lower cost vehicles. Remember, the 3 and Y are 95% of Tesla's volume today. And with these new vehicles coming out, they could even in an IRA in an environment where, let's say, the IRA does reduce or go away. I think Tesla's set up, to step into that environment with new lower cost vehicles that actually account for that. So you're going to have it's going to be easy on the consumer from a credit and a rate perspective, but there may be some pressure on MSRPs where Tesla's going to come in. They're going to come in kind of perpendicular to that and release new vehicles versus having to put more pressure on their MSRPs. So I think the narrative is more important than the actual Q4.
Jeff, I've got a question for you. So as we go into Q4, we talked about a variety of incentives that Tesla can still continue to offer. You have some Tesla bears, like I think Ross Gerber recently said, oh, the interest rates cut has zero impact to Tesla because they're already offering the 1.99% financing and now the 2.99% financing. What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, it's a very kind of low quality answer. When rates go up, there are people that have less access to capital than they would have had before. And even if Tesla comes in and buys down the rate, well, then Tesla's putting pressure on their gross margins. So if Tesla can let up on that a little bit and start meeting the banks halfway, it's going to be less pressure on Tesla between MSRP and net ASP. It's going to be less pressure on that, less pressure on margins. So, I mean, I don't know how else to say that. And then, by the way, the other bear argument I find interesting is that, oh, well, Tesla's doing these rate programs. Well, everybody else is doing these rate programs, by the way. Like what's the alternative? The alternative is you don't do the rate program. You take a huge hit in volumes. You idle your factories. You idle your supply base, and then your real cost structure in your real, your true EBIT margins go down as a result. So the alternative is bad. So you're going to have gross margin pressure either way. The better choice is to keep your utilization rates as high as possible, knowing that you're not going into a rate hiking regime, you're going into a rate cutting or easing regime, and you're going to be releasing these lower cost vehicles. So I think Tesla's kind of connecting themselves where they see themselves, so like skating to where the puck is going to be in the future, which is higher volumes.
Okay, so I want to ask. Sorry, Xander, go ahead.
I think that's perfectly said. I remember Elon saying,
I can't hear Xander if you saw.
Oh, great!
Can't hear you, Xander. Sorry about that. So I'll get to you, Chris. I want to ask Sawyer and Jeff. Okay, if the Tesla has a goal to have higher volumes, and they're going to try to, they're not going to, do. I'm sure, right? It just makes sense that they're not going to. They're going to do their best to not hit under 1.8 of what they sold last year. In order to do that, they want to create incentives. They've already introduced quite a number of incentives that we hadn't even thought that they would do, right? So not only they're now doing the financing 1.99%, then they started introducing the no down. What kind of incentives can you guys see that they might be able to pull? What kind of levers does Tesla have? They seem to have quite a number of things that they could choose to do.
They could offer some supercharging incentives. You could get maybe FSD if you purchase a new car for like 90 days or something. But back in May, they had for the Model Y at least, it was a 0.99% financing rate, whereas right now it's 1.99. So it's possible they could just go back to what they had in May, which seemed to absolutely work insanely well. A lot of people jumped on that back then. So they probably will stick with 1.99 for now, but I think if they just want to do a last-ditch effort heading into the end of Q4, wouldn't be surprised to see 0.99.
Geez, Sawyer, not very creative there. You just go with financing, supercharging. Come on, dude. There must be some other stuff that Tesla has, right? That's going to move the needle.
I mean, I'll try to come up with something, but they always seem to get creative. But one thing I worry about is all these incentives are really confusing to keep track of. And if you have too many, it just becomes too much for a buyer to keep, like I said, keep track of. So I do worry a little bit about how confusing it gets, and if people are even aware of most of these incentives. I think Tesla's doing a little bit better job of educating people on them. I know the guy that makes the signs actually for all the stores as you walk in, so they're trying to educate people on those a little bit better. But I think their social media efforts could also increase on the education part.
Yeah. That's a great point, actually, sir. So at the end of the day, it's about no down and lower interest rates. That's the thing, right? That's going to move it. Jeff, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, you just have to find out where are consumers being pressured, and it's access to loans and it's the monthly rate. And so you want to have incentives that drive that. And the messaging thing is right. The awareness thing is right. I mean, I think the awareness is pretty low about the total cost of ownership of a vehicle, but the people that are super savvy are doing that research, and they are the ones that are converting from from ICE to EV. But yeah, Tesla has more. Tesla's in it's in an interesting position from a financing arm perspective. Some of these traditional legacy automakers have an advantage because these are separate companies. They can, it's easier for them to show this, to put these on, and to show this doesn't impact their financials and their gross margins directly as much as it does Tesla. When Tesla does this, they take a very aggressive stance in terms of how they reflect this in in the current quarter. So they have to be very aggressive about it, and it'll it hits them more. But I think being conservative is probably the right thing to do. And again, the only way Tesla could actually do this kind of stuff is they know they're going into a rate cutting regime versus going into a rate hiking regime. And that's why before they were battling this with MSRP changes, and now they can fix the MSRP, which again, they need to do that as well. From a portfolio perspective, they can't keep bringing the 3 and Y down because they have these other vehicles that are going to be in the middle of that, and they want them to have some sort of separation.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Chris, do you want to join?
Yeah, hi guys. I just have a brief question here. My interest is trying to identify to what extent you guys have looked into these regulatory credits and under the assumption that one removes them. We had in the last 9 months, like I believe it's 1.3 or 4 billion in regulatory credits. It's approximately like $500 million in revenue, like for Tesla per quarter, and basically without that, like the EPS would have been around like 50, 52, something like that. And it takes like around 1 million like FSD subscribers paying that monthly subscription to like get us to those same levels. Like how are you guys looking at this in 2025?
Looking at it as number one, there's three different things that are being talked about, and one of them really isn't the ZEV credit piece of it. It's more of, the ZEV credit piece of it is being driven because of the EV mandate. The EV mandate, and they're by state, and there's one at a federal level. That's the main conversation that's I think that's happening politically. Regarding the actual Inflation Reduction Act, that is a law passed by Congress. And so you can't just come in as a president and just, you can't wipe it away. You'd have to get a new law through Congress. So it's looking, who knows? If you have split government, I think you're going to have a little bit more of the same, and you're going to have some stability there. But what you could have is you could have some pressure on the EV mandate, which is driving, some of the conversions to EVs. But in terms of ZEV credits, companies like Ford, Stellantis, other ones that have basically pulled back on their EV ambitions in the near term have guided to purchasing more, and they've actually reserved for purchasing more and more ZEV credits. So in the near term, I would say for 2025, I would say it's, again, this is an estimate. This is, everybody should do their own research, but I think for 2025, I think it's fairly safe. But beyond that, you would honestly need unified government and a certain, you're probably the Republicans in charge of everything to have real downside risk on that. But if you're studying Tesla as a company, by the time you get into 2026, part of your thesis has to be that more and more of their revenue is coming from software and services, and less of it's coming from bending metal and shipping hardware.
So if 20% of the last quarter's EPS is attributable to these regulatory credits, and if approximately 1 million FSD subscribers are required in order to offset that, then from your perspective, what volume of FSD, like monthly subscriptions, or cumulatively, like if you divide by 12, would you assume would exist by the end of 25?
Okay, everybody should do their own modeling. The last time Tesla publicly reported FSD subscriptions, it was in the 400,000 unit time frame, but that are people, but that was actually on V11. And then they did some reporting on V12, but it was kind of around the free period. So, I mean, just take it, with a grain of salt in terms of what they previously reported. But what I was referring to earlier, Chris, was not so much is, just FSD alone as their software and services income. It's going to be more of, in 2026, do you believe they're operating robotaxi networks? And if you do, a higher portion of their gross margins are going to be coming from software than ever before in that time frame. So the macro point I'm making here is you may have regulatory risk in the future. You're going to have regulatory risk, by the way, getting your robotaxi networks out there too. Like there's regulatory risk on the horizon. The question is, where do Tesla's revenues and margins come from, and how does that pie shift over time? If you think there's going to be risk in terms of zero emission credits and IRA credits, well then if you're looking at the EV companies, the one that's actually building up their own independent infrastructure to drive robots and to do all this stuff is Tesla. So they're gonna diversify where their margins are coming from. And if you're looking at it, it's probably in the 2026 and beyond timeframe.
Do you have your?
Yeah.
I fully understand what you're suggesting there in respect to do your own research, obviously. But is there an internal kind of like minimum that you're presuming based on the progress that you see? And I'm sorry for trying to push you on this topic, but I find your videos very interesting, and I'm curious to know where you stand on this.
What is this specifically?
I'm sorry, the amount of monthly subscribers that you believe might fall into the realm of consumers having it for the use of offering their cars a robotaxi or just purchasing it monthly to use in their own environment. What is your view in respect to this monthly accrued revenue that I'm excited about? And robotaxis for me comes after that, but this is the key point for me. And these EPS figures have a significant aspect on how I believe the stock is going to trend.
Yeah, the short answer is in the first half of 2025, small, because 2025, the first half of 2025, they're going to be ramping up FSD in China and Europe. But by the second half, I mean, you're gonna have two geographies that have equivalent and maybe slightly more Teslas on a percentage basis in each geography than the United States. And so the question is what's going to be the uptake in those geographies? And so I think you'll see more of that impact in 2025. So I'm not going to run through a model here on a voice call per se, but if you're modeling something, you're really looking at what do you think these credits are going to do, and then you've got on one side of the ledger you've got one administration, the other side of the ledger you have another administration, and if it's the current administration, it's probably more of the same. If it's the Republicans, remember they'd have to have unified government for that to go through. So I think the risk of that is lower than people are saying. I think people are just trying to say this president gets elected, everything goes away, and that's just not how government works. But you'd have to have unified government for that to happen. And then on the Tesla side of it, it's a very hard thing to model because you've got to put Tesla on a schedule, and you got to say okay, when is Tesla getting to unsupervised? That was a conversation we had earlier in the call, and my answer to that is it's extremely difficult. There's no linear model that says this is when they're going to hit it. And by the way, Tesla has stopped saying this is when we're going to hit it as well. But what they have said is they to me, what I'm hearing from the companies, that they have greater confidence now in being able to achieve it. It's just a matter of when.
Okay.
So
That's the great question. Good answer. Since we have Sawyer here, I'll let him choose the next topic. If folks don't know, I think everybody here is probably following Sawyer on X. You should do that. So today, just in the last 24 hours, here's the kind of stories that you posted out there. First, Tesla China. They had a video from Weibo showing that Giga Shanghai can produce a vehicle every 30 seconds. That's 20,000 vehicles per week. You've got Elon meeting with various world leaders, of course, the Italian Prime Minister, the President of South Africa, President of Argentina. You got Kia EVs is going to gain access to Tesla supercharger network, just one in a long line of lists. Tesla's Model 3 crowned as UK's most efficient car. Tesla Model Y voted best family EV in parent poll. Lots of news about Starlink everywhere. I'm just going through your list. I love it.
Yeah,
Look
one
at
thing
that.
I meant to make a post about, which I didn't get time to today, was I'd like to see a larger share of Tesla's new vehicle purchases be from new buyers to the brand. In Q2 of this year, 33% of new Tesla car sales came from people who already owned a Tesla. And that speaks to how strong the brand is and the great brand loyalty, and people love their Teslas. That's great. But I think coming up with new ways to reach people who haven't owned a Tesla before would be good to see. By the way,
So,
that Q2 number of 33% having already owned Tesla, that could partly be because Q2 had really strong incentives for existing owners, the FSD transfer. I think there was a free supercharging transfer and a few other things. But in general, I think it'd be good to see more outreach to
do
non-Tesla
they?
owners.
Yeah, do they split that out? New owners versus previous owners?
No, this is just something that the CFO shared during the Q2 earnings call.
What did they share? Oh yeah, that 90 something percent of oh no, what did he share? Yeah, that's right.
So it was 66% of buyers were new to the brand in Q2,
Okay.
whereas 33% were existing owners already.
Well, so Jeff, based on your experience, what is the right mix between new and new buyers and old buyers, especially for a brand like Tesla, which uniquely has such a high net promoter score?
I don't. Well, I mean, for the auto industry, I don't know. That's hard to. I don't know. That's difficult because you want the loyalty side of it and that's the net promoter score side of it. You want the loyalty side of it. You want the repeat buyer business. In terms of new ownership, there really isn't one. There really isn't one number. It's honestly dependent on your current install base and the relative available TAM that's available out there. So there isn't really one answer. So if you say you want to see more new buyers, it's not necessarily a wrong answer at all, or a right answer. It's just it's kind of qualitative.
I don't think it matters, right? Because if you create a great product, then the net promoter score, current buyers will refer you to their friends. That's what it measures, not just that they will buy themselves. But it's interesting, back to that incentive question. What kind of incentives? Should they? Have you guys been watching these commercials by the cell phone companies? There's one cell phone companies that they're pointing out that many of these cell phone companies will have this incredible promotion, but it's only available to new customers. It's not available to your current customers. Should they be doing that? Shouldn't they be having the same incredible promotion for everybody? Right?
Yeah, you know what? That's an interesting thing to think about. I need to give it some more thought. I think that's something you want to think about more of on a subscription basis versus the full product purchase. Right now, the whole mobile phone landscape changed in the last 5 to 10 years. It went from a high percentage of people buying the product outright to a lot of people just upgrading their phone on a monthly plan. So that whole thing change. But you're right. The network operators are trying to actually grow. They're trying to grow subs. When they grow subs, then they can just start, plopping things on top of you. Every time you change a phone, charge you $35. Every time, if you want to add Disney Plus, and we have a great bundle for that. They're so yeah. Subs is the core of what they're driving. So I would think Tesla would want to be appealing to people that haven't subscribed, for example, to FSD. And I think that's one of the great reasons, like every time you've got a major release like this where you take a big jump, just offer a free period for 2 to 4 weeks. And I think your end subscriber rate will be, you'll tick higher every time.
Sanju.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you guys were talking about how there's a lack of people not experiencing Teslas, and that's a bit of a holdback on sales for the car. So I was just a bit sort of like thinking that maybe Tesla could potentially offer subsidized like Uber rides and maybe partner up with, say, restaurants or bars, whereby if people want to get a ride home, if they've had a little bit too much to drink, here's a little voucher courtesy of Tesla, get yourself home. and get people to experience it and have bums on seats, as they put it, just so at least they know that they've tried it out and see what they think.
This is one of my core thesis for why I think Tesla is going to launch a supervised Tesla network first. Is number one, you've got to get those final 10 20 feet of training in between drop-offs and pickups, and Summon and Banish are going to do part of that, but you're going to need that whole experience of how to properly drop off someone and pick them up the right way. And the bigger thing is what you're getting to is the exposure of FSD and the exposure of how Tesla vehicles operate on full self-driving, and be able to show it to more people. You have to think about it. If just throw a number out there, 500,000 people, in the US are subscribed to FSD. That's a small percentage, of the population. And so how do you get more people to see it? And what's the uptick rate for people that, the percent of people that have seen it to then wanting to test drive, and then from test drive to purchase? And I think Tesla can get really good analytics on this. And I think that could be one of the core tenets for why you would want to launch a supervised FSD network, which is you've got it so good. Now you've got it better than it's ever been. It's not perfect. It's not unsupervised yet, but you've got it to a point where you'd want to show it to more people. And what a better way to do it than you're giving rides to people in the Tesla network. So yeah, it's my thought. It's an opinion. We're all allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah,
I
the
was
best salespeople of
thinking-
Teslas are the owners themselves.
I was also just thinking, you could imagine places like Vegas, the high rollers come in, you have a Tesla Model X, for example, come pick them up, take them to the casinos, and be part of the experience.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Sawyer, this is a debate that we've been having, and Jeff, just FYI, I am wavering. Jeff believes that in 1010, they're going to announce a Tesla network that's going to allow supervised robotaxi, exactly like Uber, maybe underpriced Uber, but there's humans like you and me who own our Teslas going to drive people. Where do you sit on that, Sawyer?
Do you mean just like the ride-sharing app, or people just sit in the pass or their driver's seat rather, or just
Sawyer, will take your Tesla and you'll put it on a network, and then people will order you, and you will go there just like an Uber.
Yeah, I think that's
the
reasonable.
option to do that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And it may not be on 1011. It may be within a month or two, but I think that's my hypothesis.
Yeah, they've been teasing the images of the application or the phone app for a while now, and I think that's a reasonable expectation for just at least an announcement of it, maybe not a launch of it.
Did you guys hear? Herbert is wavering in his position. I think we should listen to Jeff.
Herbert's been vehemently disagreeing with me, telling me like offline, how stupid could you be?
Never.
No one thinks this way. No one thinks
I know.
this way.
I've
You're
seen
the only person.
screenshots. I've seen it.
Not true.
Yeah, Xander's seen it.
Still can't see it happening, but I'm wavering. You make good points, but we'll see. Hey, Warren, welcome up. We were just talking about so many topics. Tesla. This time we were talking about Tesla stock. Last week when you joined, is Tesla ready for a breakthrough? We weren't talking Tesla stock. Today we're just talking about institutional analysts finally getting that Tesla's more than just a car company, and they're seeing robotaxi, they're seeing the new affordable vehicles. So, Warren, I didn't ask you that question. Do you think that Tesla will have a supervised Tesla network that's going to be released very similar to Uber-like?
I don't think so, but I don't have high confidence in that. To me, it doesn't fit with how Tesla operates. I could see my best theory on that, because I don't think relying on Tesla owners to supply supervised robotaxi service or rideshare service is a reliable way to start. I could see Tesla redeploying ADAS drivers in a particular market to supervise robo-taxi rides. They have probably more than 1,000 ADAS operators, and they may need them less. They may come a point, just like they needed labeler. They didn't need labelers anymore. There may come a point where ADAS operators become less important, and they can still act as ADAS operators in this role. So having employees do that work rather than random Tesla owners might be more reliable.
Okay,
Could we
good.
maybe see driverless operators in operations in the boring tunnel in Vegas, for example?
So the problem, I think people, I may be wrong about this, but as I understand how AI learns, you want to develop enough data to operate in the environment that you're training for. And I don't think they have enough cars in the tunnels yet to generate sufficient data. And I don't think they typically operate unless there's a convention. Maybe they're starting to operate when there's no convention, but the convention center is the center of the loop. So until they open, let's say, the airport or have a lot more of the strip under the Boring Company, until the tunnels reach more of the strip, I don't think it makes sense to. I don't think you have enough data to train for the environment. I think we think, well, driving in a tunnel should be easier than driving somewhere else, but AI doesn't necessarily learn the same way that we do. And so driving the tunnels, and especially if you've ever been in the tunnel system, the stations are an unusual environment. Like driving straight in a tunnel, yeah, that's easy. But the stations have I've seen maybe I talked to somebody directly about it when I was there, or I heard somebody else talking about it also. Humans behave oddly in the tunnels, in the stations. So you want to be able to predict human behavior. And humans do things you don't expect in those stations. So I think they need to have a lot more data to train on how to drive in those environments. And sorry, I also think I don't. Can people hear me, by the way?
Yes. Yeah. Keep going.
And I also think that when you're like deciding what priority to put on where you're going to use your training compute, you've got, I don't know, let's say 100 cars operating in boring tunnels that operate, an average of 10 hours a week. And then you've got, you know, I don't know, 20,000 Cybertrucks that people are whining that they don't have FSD yet. Where are you going to devote your training? And you've got a million, you know, probably, a few million Model Ys and a million or two Model 3s out there. Where are you going to devote your training resources? Well, you got 10 version of hardware 3 and hardware 4, and all those people are complaining that they want, the latest version of FSD. So when you have limited compute and you have to devote your training resources to something, I think 100 cars in tunnels doesn't rate high on the list of places to devote your training resources. I think the Boring Company tunnel will expand. They'll probably start, as far as I know, the drivers aren't even using autopilot. The drivers are just driving. They're not even using, supervised FSD or autopilot in the tunnel system. The drivers are just driving. Um, it's just not. I think it's not a priority, and it's not necessary yet until the tunnel gets bigger.
We can move on from that one. I agree.
Warren, you usually have some very unique thinking and different kind of theories. What's your theory on the two new things that Tesla might announce on October 10th?
Well, I think the first production version of Optimus seems extremely likely. He laid out that he expects 3 iterations of Optimus, and the third one should be in 5 years and maybe 6, and each iteration should take less than 2 years. It's like, well, then the first iteration should be about now. If you think you're going to have it done in 5 years, and you think every iteration is less than a little less than 2 years, then the first iteration better be right about now. So I think they're going to show the first production intent prototype. He said they have a prototype, right? The first production ready prototype of Optimus for generation 1, and then I actually think that we're going to see. I mean, these are more speculative. Obviously, I think the Optimus one is obvious, but I think more speculatively, I think a van probably not. Um, I would love to see a new Model X, but that's my personal preference is like redo like I think people are missing the potential of a new Model X. Not a refresh Model X and not a new Model S, just that the demand for 7-passenger SUVs is huge. If you re-engineered Model X and you accepted you were going to give up the Falcon Wing doors and you just got costs down, but made it nice, $60,000 would be, you'd have massive sales. Make it in China, make it in the U.S. Sell it in the Asian markets, in Europe from China, and I'm assuming that Europe doesn't tariff them, and sell them in the U.S. And I think it's 250 to 500,000 units a year if you do that at $60,000.
We just checked on Polymarket, and that's 500,000 to 1 odds that Tesla shows a new Model X on Robotaxi.
I don't know how many people. I just
kidding, just giving you a hard time more.
No, but they've said they're going to repurpose existing lines, and the least productive line Tesla has is the Fremont Model S and X line. I mean, what are they producing? 50,000 units a year? There's what other Tesla line produces that few number of vehicles? It's a massive missed opportunity. It may just not be a priority for them to do it, but they said they were going to bring forward new vehicles, and they said including affordable new vehicles. Well, that means there also might be more affordable new vehicles. There might also be some less affordable new vehicles. If you read how they worded that in the slide deck, and how I think they said it openly, people focused on the more affordable vehicles. They left out that the way they said it, there's also going to be less affordable vehicles. And so I think the natural, look, I'm here in Asia. The Chinese EV makers are rolling out 7-passenger vehicles, right? There's a demand for it, and Tesla doesn't have a vehicle that really fits that bill yet, and it's a high value, high average selling price, and they have the line just ready to be used for something that's better. So that I'll agree it's relatively long odds, but like what? And you're not Osborning anything significant. If you introduce a $30,000 small sedan or small SUV, you might be Osborning some Model Y or Model 3. But if you introduce a new Model X, what are you Osborning? You're Osborning a vehicle that doesn't sell anyway.
Yeah, I think there was credible reports from China that referring to a 7-seater Model Y. That makes sense, that they'll do variations on existing Model Y.
Well, I think the next generation, the next Model X, is an extended Model Y. Like, if you want to keep the manufacturing costs down, just build a larger Model Y on the Model Y platform.
Very interesting.
If anybody's interested, there's a company called MG, which is, I think, Great Wall Motors. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. Maybe it's SAIC.
MG was bought by one of those two. Yep.
Yeah. So they have a Maxus 7 and a Maxus 9. We've been in the Maxus 7. The Maxus 9 is bigger and more expensive. The Maxus 7 is, I think, the same price as the standard range Model Y here. And it's pretty fucking nice. I'm not saying it drives as well. I'm not saying it's efficient. I'm not saying it has the same charge rate. But the interior's my wife was like, wow, we should get this. Fuck Tesla, I want this.
Wow.
No, she didn't drive it. We were supposed to drive one, and then the Chinese EV makers, by the way, they don't always have their act together on the sales side. Like, we went to a BYD dealership and said, can we test drive one? It's like, no, you need an appointment. Like, there's fucking no one here. Like, why can't we we walked in, we can't test drive a car. There's no one here. Why can't we test drive a car? So it's like there's some odd behavior, and like they were supposed to have this car at this event where people could take test drives, and then they couldn't get it there. And it's like, we just saw it. It was 10 miles away from the location. Like, how could you not get it there for this event? So there's some quirky behavior with the Chinese getting their shit together on the sales side. But they're making pretty good looking cars at pretty good looking prices.
That's cool. All right, Sat, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I just wanted to add that if about the Model S and X, I don't know if that necessarily would get rid of the line, but I know the Cybertruck platform. I would bet that there would have to be something on that platform, another vehicle, whether it's a van or another SUV or whatever else, because every single one of the lines has at least two. It doesn't make sense to make one platform with only one vehicle and to make another entirely different platform for each vehicle. It wouldn't make a lot of capital, like efficiency reasons. It wouldn't be efficient capital in terms of capital usage.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who want a cyber SUV. Many people have been saying they want to see a cyber SUV, but that's a U.S. market thing because it's
Exactly.
large and expensive, so it's not going to fly in most of the rest of the world.
The compact car will like be dominating over what the Model 3 initially started. Like people don't understand because they don't live in Asia, they don't see in Europe. Like my friend's mom has this compact car that's like 8 years old, 100,000 kilometers on it. It doesn't matter. It's the dealer every time they go for an oil change, like, do you want to sell it? Because it's such in high demand, and so they don't need a vehicle form that's so big, and the streets aren't made that way. Like some of the streets you have to like wait because they're in kind of the countryside. If there's two cars, one car has to wait and for the other to pass. So there's no incentive to have a bigger car. The Model 3 would technically be a little bit of a big car. And so the compact car has an enormous reach. A lot of the parking garages in Japan, you can't park a Model Y. Even though a Model Y is considered kind of small in the US, it's considered big, right? Over in Japan. So there's a huge difference in the market, and that people don't understand that right now the focus should be going down. So I would expect some kind of compact car related stuff if there's going to be any kind of veil. But I would foresee that there's something also on the Cybertruck platform. I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah, the thing about the compact is, number one, it appears that Elon does believe in the Osborne effect, so you're Osborning. I don't think you do a reveal on that vehicle until you're ready to sell it, because now you're just cutting into sales of your existing vehicles without getting any revenue from it, unless you're going to do a $5,000 reservation or something like that, which they're not going to do.
Well, that's the thing. Every time Tesla has actually made a vehicle, it's pulled from other markets that it was not intended to. So even the Model 3 was supposed to compete with the BMW M3 like section, but then it brought like Civic and Prius owners were trading in and as huge trade-ins that they never expected. So even the K car, which is the subcompact in Japan, they range from like around $8,000 new to up to the compact car, it's 20,000. My friend has a car that's probably around 10,000 to 12,000. Even if you have a $25,000 compact EV from Tesla, over the course of the years that you use it, it will be cheaper. It would become cheaper. And if you also, your fuel is much more expensive in Japan, for example. So every time you go farther, it'll take that market that wasn't there before. And people are willing to also have better safety, because that's the other part that's like, nobody talks about. Like there's so many accidents that become like national headlines in Japan, where a gigantic truck that's carrying stuff like, the IKEA type of like huge trucks, they crush a K car, it literally flattens it and it kills everyone in the car. So if you have a car that's slightly more expensive, that can be like 5 times safer, and it'll save you, then I think it would be worth it. And I think people would see that value as long as they're informed about it. So I think that people will also change their mindset, instead of saying the cheapest possible product to the best value in terms of your money. And over the course of the years, you would technically be just financing it through your payments rather than paying it through gas basically. So I just think that it's kind of, people say the same cannibalism kind of thing. I don't think it's going to be that way with Teslas. There's other people who never considered it. I never considered getting a Cybertruck. I got a truck, period. I would never imagine it. But because of Cybertruck, I got a Cybertruck, right? So there's going to be plenty of people like that.
Man, great conversation. Appreciate you guys. I do want to restart this again next week on Tuesday. Please join earlier if you can, Warren and Sat. Appreciate you guys so much. And Sanju, thank you for joining. Join us every Tuesday. I think, did I say Thursday? Appreciate everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.